My guest today has been a well-known figure in the fitness industry for decades. Being first known as a celebrity trainer, he's worked with the likes of comedians Margaret Cho, Howie Mandel, and many more of Hollywood's elite. If all of those accomplishments weren't impressive enough, he's also a best-selling author with his book, The Fitness Confidential, which also just happens to be the name of his long-running podcast. He was once known as the angriest trainer in America, but I just simply know him as Vinnie. Please welcome Vinnie Tortorich. Vinnie, welcome to the Jacked Up podcast, brother. Glad to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, John. This is great. How are you handling the whole COVID-19 thing over there?
Well, fortunately, I live in the mountains, so it's easy for me to stay away from everybody. I only go to town when I absolutely have to. And in today's age where you have, like Aldi's and places like that, where you can just go online and order your groceries and have them delivered to you, makes it a breeze, man. Makes it a breeze.
Now, are you taking extra precautionary? So when someone delivers your grocery, are you getting out there and wiping it down when it comes in the house? How are you handling it?
Yeah, I leave them. I make them leave it outside, and then I go out and I wipe the bags and everything down. But the company that I use mainly is Aldi's, and I can say that when their drivers come out, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing masks. So I think they're doing a really good job as far as trying to prevent it for sure.
Yeah, you see the gloves, you see the mask, but you don't know how long that guy's had those gloves on, or if the other guy at the store was coughing on the product and the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I like all the precautions we're taking. I'm wondering how long we're going to go with this, before people. I think we're going to have some problems with it, to be honest with you.
I don't doubt it.
We have celebrities with it now. People like Hanks, Rita, and John, and Tom Hanks have it.
Yes. Yep.
I think Idris Elba and a few other celebrities. And these people are going to all live. Mm-hmm. And then I think a lot of people are going to go, wait a minute, they're living, therefore this is not a big deal. In the first 5 minutes of this whole thing, we were telling everyone, hey, if you get this, you're dead in 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
And now we're realizing that people aren't dying in 5 minutes. And
mm-hmm.
I think people are going to let their guard down. I'm worried more about the second kind of wave that could happen versus the first. And I don't think people should get overly crazy. But my hometown, where I grew up in Louisiana, there's an outbreak there, and it's in one of these old age homes.
Oh,
so you hear about that, and you go, "Oh my God, I know these people."
Right.
So that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I'll tell you, man, I ran across your podcast after having Scott King on my show, which from what I understand, he's been on your podcast. He's real big proponent of NSNG and DDP yoga, and his story is like absolutely amazing. So I found you through him, and I started listening to your podcast, and I binged for a long time, and I was like, this is awesome. And I was doing all this while I was editing Scott's episode of my podcast. So then when it went live and I posted on Twitter and you commented on it, I was like, man, this is like crazy. So I absolutely had to reach out to you, and it took us a little bit. We were having some email issues, but I'm glad we were able to work them out, and I'm glad to have you on the show. So now let me ask you, for those of my viewers and listeners who don't know who Vinnie Tortorich is, why don't you give them a little bit about your background?
Oh, wow. I have been in this business for a long time. I walked into a gym in 1970. So that puts an age on me. I'm 57 now. So I walked into a gym when I was 8 years old. I pretty much never walked out. The gym did a lot for me. It gave me confidence when I was a young kid. I was being picked on and what have you, and gave me a ton of confidence. It also, we didn't realize this at the time, but I turned out to be a pretty good athlete. I played all the sports in high school, being from the Deep South: football, baseball, basketball, ran track, and I ended up with a football scholarship, a D1 football scholarship. Went to Tulane. I played on the last two teams to beat LSU back-to-back years. back when Tulane was playing that kind of football. And just kept on with fitness. Got my degree in exercise physiology and nutrition at Tulane and moved on from there. Taught at Newman School. That's where Peyton Manning and Eli Manning went to school. I coached their older brother, Cooper Manning, the one that everyone hears about but never sees.
Right, right.
And on and on and on. And at some point around 1990, I moved out to LA. It was at the beginning of that big fitness craze when everybody was looking for a trainer. I just happened to run along the right people and got into that celebrity trainer thing where I was training the right people.
Yeah.
So it worked out for me.
Oh.
So that's the beginning. That's how it all started.
Okay.
You know, once I had a client that, everyone says, how did I get a client who I took a lot of weight off of? I'll tell you, her name was Margaret Cho. And, she had a sitcom coming up. That was back when every show was a sitcom. There was like 40-something sitcoms on the big three, ABC, CBS. And every late night talk, Jay Leno and David Letterman and all of these people, my name was on their lips because Margaret was going on those shows.
Right.
And as soon as they would say, how did you lose the weight? She would say, Vinnie Tortorich. And then every agent in town wrote down Vinnie Tortorich and said, hey, get this guy on speed dial right now.
Right.
I couldn't have done that again if I tried. So when people say, how did you become well-known in Hollywood? I got the right client at the right time, took a ton of weight, 60 pounds off of her. And, she was on Leno and Letterman and also Dog Pound.
Arsenio Hall. Yep.
Arsenio Hall was big back then. Yeah. So that's how I became famous. Those people were mentioning my name.
Yeah, and that just goes to show you, back then it took someone mentioning your name, and now it's social media. If you put yourself out there in the social media space, all you have to do, like if you're somebody that makes YouTube videos about health and fitness or whatever, all you have to do is make the right video at the right time and let it go viral. And the next thing you know, you're in the same situation that you were in back those years ago.
And I'm glad you mentioned that because, when I wrote a book called Fitness Confidential about, I wrote the book over 9 years ago. Once I wrote the book, the people over at William Morris Endeavor said, we know who you are because you've been training our clients forever, but you don't exist on Google. Like your name does not come up on the internet. So in order to sell this book, you're going to have to somehow go on the internet and become famous. And I was like, I'm not a Kardashian. I don't have a big, sweet looking ass. So I'm not quite sure how to become famous on the internet. I'm just an old dude. At the time, I was in my late 40s.
Right.
So I started a podcast. It was the early days of podcasts. I was one of the early guys in. The podcast still does incredible numbers. We get well over 1 million downloads a month.
Wow.
I do 5 fresh shows every week. So we do over 200 some odd shows per year. And we've been doing that for the better part of 8 years now. And so when Fitness Confidential, the book came out, it went right to the top of the charts because there was kind of a clear sheet for it to do that. Just to kind of ramp up, I was the first guy that kind of brought, low carb. Well, low carb, I can't say that. Low carb was out there. I did not invent low carb. Please do not get the wrong impression.
Right.
But to bring it to the masses, and I was scared to call it ketogenic diet. I was scared to say low carb because, I saw what Atkins had gone through in the 70s, negative connotation. So when I wrote Fitness Confidential and when I started the podcast, I tried to quote unquote sugarcoat it, John, by saying, oh yeah, it's just cut out sugars, cut out grains, no sugars, no grains. We started the whole NSNG craze, which, and those words are now associated. Well, I have the trademark on them, so they're associated with me.
Gotcha. So the book was actually the catalyst that started the whole NSNG thing. And now that makes sense because when I first started in studying about NSNG, and I knew that we were going to do this podcast, I noticed that there were a lot of similarities to a lot of the other types of diets. Um, and you being a nutritionist yourself, as well as I do, that there are a lot of differences to nutritional keto and like NSNG and some of the other formats that they have out there. How would you say that NSNG compares to the ketogenic diet in relation to the original ketogenic diet and how it was first brought about?
Very interesting question, John. It's really no different. And I'm glad you keep using the word diet, because I refuse to call NSNG a diet. Because as soon as something becomes a diet, it gives everyone a chance to just jump on it. Look, since I own the trademark, nobody can put NSNG on a food. Just like, you'll see a food and it'll say vegan, right?
Mm-hmm.
There
Right.
is no FDA thing that you have to go through to put the word vegan on a food. In
Yeah.
fact, it doesn't even have to be vegan, and you can put the words vegan on a food. Same
Right.
thing with keto. You can go, this is a keto food or a keto-friendly food. And then you can start making all kinds of crap and putting crap on the market and calling it keto.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happened with paleo. You can put anything, you can call anything paleo. You
Yeah.
can put, you can have a bag of sugar and put paleo on it, and you go, wait, that's not paleo. Well, sugar was around in vegetation back during the Paleolithic era, so we can
Sure.
call that paleo. So I refuse to allow, NSNG to go down that road. That's why you don't see any product with NSNG on it. I refuse to let it be called a diet.
Right.
You could do no sugars, no grains and be in dietary ketosis, or
Mm-hmm.
you could do no sugars, no grains and not be in dietary ketosis. It could be done both ways.
Sure.
And, I personally live in ketosis. I don't want to get into the weeds of it, but I had leukemia. I beat it. I don't want leukemia to come back. So
Right.
I live in dietary ketosis. I realize that's way too strict for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who have followed NSNG, just like the guy you had on your show, and
Yes.
have lost 100, 150, 200, 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have their sleep apnea anymore. They don't have fatty liver disease. They
Right.
don't have any of the problems they had, type 2 diabetes. I could go on and on
Yeah.
that they had. And all they did was cut out processed foods, which
Mm-hmm.
means all of the seed oils too.
Yes.
They cut out sugars and they cut out grains, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Yep.
were still eating vegetation. They might not have been in dietary ketosis, but look, they got their life back. They lost all the weight and they're back to where they were at the beginning.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I'm glad you touched on that too, because I typically don't, when I'm working with my clients, I don't use the word diet. I use nutritional protocol is typically what I
Right.
call it. But because the general masses identify the ketogenic diet and the paleo diet and the Atkins diet, we as people that are creating content around this stuff, we kind of have to use it. But I'm glad that you're of the same school of thought as me, that it's not a diet. I liken the word diet to a Band-Aid. Okay. If somebody's on a diet, they're on a diet until they're off of it. That's like putting a Band-Aid
Right.
on cancer. I say that all the time. And that's how I feel about it. And for more people that are in the fitness space, online doing podcasts and things like that, need to subscribe to the same philosophy, in my view, because it gets people away from, okay, well, all I have to do is a diet for X amount of time and then I'm good to go. That's not the case. If you have 150 pounds to lose, you have lifestyle changes to make. You don't need a diet.
Right. It's so true, John. I always say, the word diet is what indigenous people eat. It's,
Mm-hmm.
how, I eat, how you eat, wherever you are. We're one state away from each other.
Right.
The Indians ate a different diet from the Maasai masses, and
Mm-hmm.
the Indians ate a different diet than the people in South America. You could just diet is what you eat as an indigenous people.
Yeah.
Dieting has a beginning, middle, and end.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I'm dieting right now. That no one ever says I'm dieting. What
Right.
they're saying is, even if they just say I'm dieting, they're saying I'm dieting right now. right? And that's the same as a diet.
Yep.
And I like to make that distinction because people get that wrong so often. If someone is dieting, that means they started on the Monday and they're going to do some crazy version of something, and it's going to
Exactly.
end at some point.
Yeah.
And you're right. When someone has 150 pounds to lose, and look, we've seen people do it on calorie in, calorie out diets over and over. One of the best epidemiological studies in the world is Weight Watchers. All of those people, almost to a person, gains the weight back.
Yes.
Very few people keep it off. And they'll say, wait a minute, Vinny, I lost it 4 times on Weight Watchers. Think about what you're saying. You lost it while you were doing something that did not make sense.
Right.
And as soon as you started doing something that made sense, wrong thing again, you put all the weight back on.
Right.
We can look at the show The Biggest Loser, almost to a person, everyone has put the weight back on.
Yep.
These are many epidemiological studies. So actually, Weight Watchers is a huge epidemiological study.
Yeah.
You can look at it and go, okay. And by the way, the company will admit that they have a plus or minus 2% success rate, plus or minus. Now, when you take plus or minus and 2% is the success rate, you can have a -2.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you do simple rules.
Right. My whole thing is, and it's actually kind of funny because I just recently had a guest on my show, and she coined a phrase that I really liked, and I think I may start quoting her on it. Her name is Misty Harris, and she says the first 3 letters in diet spell die. And I thought that was really funny. But you're right. A diet is like a workout in my view. A diet is something you're doing for a defined period of time. You're going to start a diet, you're going to be in the middle of the diet, and then you're going to have an end of the diet. And that's okay for somebody that only has to lose 10 or 15 pounds to fit into a wedding dress or a suit or something like that for an occasion. But for people that have a lot more to lose and have medical risks, like people that are at risk for type 2 diabetes and things of this nature, they don't need diets.
I want to capitalize on what you're saying about, losing the 10 or 15 pounds. Over the years, I walked into people's homes for the better part of 40 years, 37 years.
Right.
And there's always the picture of the wedding, the wedding picture sitting somewhere in the foyer when you get to the living area.
Right.
There's the wife looking as good as she's ever looked. I always joke that 2 things happen. They gain weight and they cut their hair. When you see any wedding picture, you got the long flowing hair and you have the whole thing done up, and you can see their cheekbones and you can see their clavicles and you can see, and they've never looked so good. And when I interview these people, because I'm just super interested in what people do and how they do it. And when you interview these people, because the reason I was called in is because they weighed 50 or 60 pounds more, I'll say, how much did you weigh in that picture right there, the wedding picture? And they're always so proud to tell you, oh man, back then, I dieted for 6 months. I was going to fit into that dress. I starved myself. I ran 5 miles a day. I ran 10 miles a day. I went to the gym and did the elliptical like a mad woman. Right. Oh man, when I got to that day, I looked better than I had ripped abs, and you could see if I took my dress off, you could see my hip bones, man. You can see, and I'll go, yeah. And then what happened after that? Well, the honeymoon, and then you get you're getting to the groove of things, and you get a little lax. The part they don't tell you is, well, they do tell you. They go, that's the best I ever looked in my life. So when you look at their teenage years and everything else, when they should have been, more ripped than any other time in their life, you have more hormones coursing through your veins.
Right.
This was the moment at 27, at 30, at 32, at 33. This was the moment when they looked the best in their life. They worked their asses off and they starved themselves. But look what happened after that. They didn't just lose 15 pounds. They gained the 15 pounds back and another 30, 40, or 50 on top of that.
Yeah.
Because number one, what they were doing was not sustainable. Number two, you have the boomerang effect. Right. And number three, once that boomerang effect starts going in the other direction, you got the momentum working on the lazy side of things. And it's hard to bring it all back together. And before you know it, 10 years down the road, they're calling me.
Yeah.
That never had to happen if they were doing the right thing and didn't try to do anything crazy for the wedding.
Yep.
And by the way, some of them will tell you, yeah, I lost it for the wedding, and then a year later we were going back to where we had the original honeymoon, and I did it again. I did it again. I went crazy again. And we get into that rhythm of, hey man, January 1st. I see my business going up every January 1st. My
Absolutely.
My vitamin companies, our sales go up in January, February, and they just go down after that. You look at everything, people just go crazy. And then, again, we start seeing a boost again right around spring break time, and it goes down, and we see another boost in May.
Yeah.
And this happens over and over and over again, right? So people just yo-yo all year long, when in fact you can look great all the time.
Sure.
You don't have to, and it's not just about looks. You can look great, feel great, be healthy all the time. You just have to, do it.
Yep, exactly. And that's why we say, and so many of us talk about it just being a lifestyle change, and that's it. If you make it a lifestyle, it becomes second nature. You don't have to get up in the morning and think about, hopping on the exercise bike for 20 minutes and then getting in the shower before you go to work. You just do it. You know what I mean? It's just like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. Most people get up and that's one of the first things they do. Well, if you include some sort of exercise in your day and you make a habit where you do it every day, then you don't have to think about it as much. It doesn't become a chore. Same thing with healthy nutrition. If you have a general idea of what your nutrition is going to be like throughout the course of the day, and you plan for that type of stuff, and you're not, just grabbing stuff out of vending machines and driving through the fast food drive-thrus and stuff like that, it's a whole lot easier to maintain a healthy life. But if you don't, then you deal with the consequences.
Yeah, John, one of the Vinnie-isms, you used half of one of my Vinnie-isms right there in that statement.
Okay.
I said, exercise is like brushing your teeth or wiping your ass. Neither one of those things is necessary, but boy, they're great ideas.
Oh, yeah.
So, think of it that way. There was a time in this world when you go, oh, people didn't brush their teeth. No, before the turn of the last century, toothbrushing was not a deal. It just didn't happen. And butt wiping, you can still find places in the world. I was in India. You would walk in bathrooms, and at first I was going, man, they always seem to be out of toilet paper. And then I realized, wait, they don't use toilet paper.
Right.
They just wait till the end of the day and I guess clean up, shower up or whatever.
Yeah.
That's where we are in the world. We don't need toilet paper. We don't need toothbrushes. And yeah, you could get away without working out for a while, but all three of those are great ideas.
Indeed. And I have found too that if you have practiced that lifestyle for a while and you slack off for whatever reason, like I experienced this myself last year. I had some knee issues that had me inactive for about 8 months last year. And in that 8 months time, because I couldn't do cardio, I pretty much couldn't do anything but sit around. I put on 50 pounds. But soon as everything went back to normal, as soon as I had knee replacement surgery and got released to go back to the gym and stuff like that, inside of a month, I lost 30 pounds right away, because it's like your body remembers. If you've done stuff like that for a while and you slack off for whatever reason, when you pick it back up, muscle memory is a real thing. It happens. Your body adapts quickly if you've done it in the past to exercise and good nutrition, and you'd be amazed at how fast you can see things change.
Yeah, it is a thing. 2 weeks ago, I talked about this on my podcast. I went to my gym one day and I said, hey, this COVID-19 is happening. And they're like, yeah, we're open, we're good. And I went the very next day, and there was a sign on the door, hey, we're closed. And we don't know when we're going to open again. So I was already, I had my gym clothes in the car. So I just changed in the car and drove to a local, we both live in the same kind of terrain, and just jogged uphill for a while. Got 45 minutes going up a hill and then turned around and came back down. And then the next day I said, okay, I can use that same hill.
Mm-hmm.
But what about exercise? So what about weights? I started doing push-ups and whatever I could do around the house. I did some lunges around the house
Mm-hmm.
and did that for a couple of days. And by the end of the week, I went online. I went on Facebook Marketplace. There was a guy selling some barbells. I have an old vintage York barbell now. Just
Right.
threw it in my house.
Uh-huh.
Got some plates. Came home, cleaned them up. It was easy to just clean them up and then put a little WD-40 on them, get the rust off.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great set of weights now.
Yeah.
And he had a bench also, just a commercial style bench.
Mm-hmm.
I have a whole gym right here in my house now. It's not a rental unit while we're waiting for our next house to be ready, but
Mm-hmm.
I have it in this house. It's kind of stuffed in here, and I'm getting my workout in.
Right.
I'm getting what I need, so that I don't have to lose any ground or feel like, oh, I feel decrepit. I'm getting out of shape or what have you. It's all kind of working out.
Yeah, yeah, and so many people right now, especially with COVID-19, they're bummed because their gyms are closed, and for as many people as you see online, posting the C10 do 10 challenges and stuff like that, there are probably twice as many people that are just bummed out because they're self quarantined and their gyms aren't open and they don't have any exercise equipment. And a lot of those people are sitting around right now and they're binge eating and things like that. And, if, like in my case, the only exercise equipment I have in my house is an exercise bike, but I live in a three-story chalet, so I've got 2 flights of steps. I live in the mountains, so there's wood that can be chopped. You can always find a way to do something. I mean, shoot, like I'm a resident coach in the Dad Bod Transformation Group on Facebook, which is a huge motivation and support resource. They've got I think they'll be at 26,000 members probably by the end of today. And this has all happened in less than 2 years. This group has grown like this, and I go live in there pretty much every day. And I was talking to one of the guys in there this morning when I was live, and he's like, you know what? He says, I don't have dumbbells, I don't have everything. He said, but I got 4 kids. I just go out in the yard and I play with the kids. And he said, I'm picking them up and I'm curling them and I'm bench pressing them and I'm putting them on my shoulders and squatting with them. Look at what that's doing. Look at what that's doing for him. Look at what that's doing. He's interacting with his kids. He's staying healthy. He's doing something. He's not just sitting around bitching, pissing, and moaning because his gym's closed. And that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, I heard a quote a long time ago, and I can't remember who said it for the life of me, but it was like, if you get up off the couch and all you do is walk around the block, you literally lapped everybody that's still sitting on the couch. So get up and do something. Move.
A true statement has never been uttered. It's funny. Once I had to start doing my own workout, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Because the weather started looking nicer, even though it's early spring. I've been in the backyard, fixing up
Mm-hmm.
getting the yard in shape, getting all the plants in shape. And I can't tell you how many trips I've taken over to Lowe's now to buy seeds and this and that and the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Just
Yep.
I'm doing all that, but the one exercise I don't have here at this house
Mm-hmm.
is pull-ups, and I didn't want to put a pull-up bar. I said, okay, last resort, I will put one up in a doorway. I'll
Mm-hmm.
just go online, buy one on Amazon, and just put it in a doorway.
Right.
But I don't like to bar up the doorways, because eventually I'll have to fix that.
Yes.
And before long, the gyms will be open. So I started looking around at what I can grab, and on day one, there's a tree in my yard,
Mm-hmm.
but the branch that sticks out horizontally it's too big, so I can't grab it like a regular pull-up bar, right? It's just
Right.
too much.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was I bear hugged it. As you can
Right.
see my hands, I bear
Yep.
hugged it like
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Instead of doing, on both sides. But you see, you can't go way up, or it's just kind of a half pull-up each way,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so,
Yep.
okay, this is something. And then the very next day, when I was jogging out to that mountain I was telling you about,
Mm-hmm.
I see a guy, they're building a church right down the street.
Right.
And I see a guy on a front end loader, moving stuff around, and
Mm-hmm.
said to him, I got him to, shut it down for a second. I said, hey, how late are you going to be out here? He goes, I knock off at 5 every evening. I said, okay, can you do me a favor? He goes, depends. What do you want? I said, can you leave the bucket up right at around 7 feet.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, I could do that. No, that's no problem." He goes, "But
Hmm.
can I ask you why?" I said, "Well, if you put that bucket at 7 feet, you got those prongs on the front. I could do pull-ups holding this way. I can use the edge of the bucket to do them that way."
Yep.
And he said, "That's the most ingenious thing I've ever heard." I said,
Hmm.
"Hey, man, I'm just desperate right now, and I need to get my workout in." On my way back from running that afternoon, bucket was at 7 feet. I just hopped and started doing my pull-ups,
Yeah.
and I had to bend my feet a little bit, but I could have called the guy. I could have seen him the next day. "Hey, can you get up to 7.5?" But he had it right at about where I needed it,
Yeah.
no problem. And I
Hmm.
just got there and did, 3 or 4 sets of pull-ups,
Right.
and it
Right.
went my way. So, where there's a will, there's a way.
Sure.
It's prison style workout. It works.
Yep.
It's great.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that because my neighbor down over the hill is actually a contractor and he has all kinds of heavy equipment. And the other morning I was outside because my dogs were raising up a fuss and I didn't know. A couple weeks ago they got sprayed by a skunk, so I wanted to make sure that that issue wasn't happening again. But I go out on my back deck to see what's going on, and I look down over the hill, and here's my neighbor who's a contractor, and he's got a bobcat with a bucket about 7.5 feet in the air, and he was doing the exact same thing that you were mentioning. That was so
Oh,
funny that you
wow.
said that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's always, if you really want to stay moving, if you really want to stay active, you can find a way to do it. It's just about being imaginative. So now, what would be your suggestion to people as far as dealing with their nutrition in these times where they are, quarantined and things of that nature? Because I know me personally, I've been telling my clients to, depending on what their nutrition protocol was, I've been telling them to dial back anywhere from 300 to 500 calories, just depending on what their workload was like before and their activity level and what they could do now. But what would your suggestions be for stuff like that?
I generally don't worry about calories a hell of a lot. The main thing I've been trying to get people to do, and I do these consults every day by phone. People can call me and do a consult. So that's
Hmm.
how I get to check the temperature of what people are up to.
Right.
And I get a lot of great podcast content out of those phone calls. So
Hmm.
uh, people said, "Hey, I'm sitting around the house more, and well, we had these gummy bears hanging around for my daughter, and I dug into the gummy bears one night," or, "Hey, I didn't, these raisins." People are acting like we've been quarantined for a year, and we
Hmm.
have, you know, we are still going to the grocery store, and picking up eggs and picking up meat and getting everything we need, cold cuts, cheese, just everything.
Yeah.
I don't understand this mentality of, well, there were raisins the other night and we're hunkered down here, so I ate a bag of raisins. Literally, one guy told me he ate almost a pound of raisins. And all I could
Wow.
think of, what's it going to look like in your bathroom tomorrow? You
Yeah.
know, um, but it's like, yeah, just don't get into that, because if you start getting into your kids' gummy bears, that's a short trip from there to a pint of ice cream that might be
Hmm.
left over from a birthday party or whatever else you might have in your house.
Yep.
I personally don't keep those items in my house.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have to worry about going to them.
Hmm.
Whenever people, so I wouldn't worry so much about the calories, as much as I would look at and worry about, well, you might want to look at the this or the that, just the
Yeah.
junk food.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so many of my clients, I'm going to say that roughly right now, about 85% of my clients are either on a low carb or zero carb diet. A lot of them come to me because they have type 2 diabetes. And I don't know if you did any research on my backstory, but in 2007, I wound up in a diabetic coma. I weighed 405 pounds. And
Wow.
now I've completely, through diet and exercise, I've completely kicked the diabetic medicine. I no longer have issues. My last A1C was like a 5.1.
Nice.
And I follow pretty much either a ketogenic or, well, it's almost carnivore because I eat very little vegetables. I eat like nuts. I'll eat macadamia nuts and almonds, some peanuts. And occasionally I'll have a salad with some raw spinach, some kale, things like that. But for the most part, it's meat. I eat a lot of meat. But it works for me. It works for me. You know what I'm saying? And this is the thing that I stress so often. And you tell me if you feel the same way. When I'm talking to 20,000 people in this group, I tell them all the time, look, it doesn't matter if you follow a ketogenic diet, or if you eat like a bodybuilder and you eat 300 grams of carbs a day and you spread it out over 7 meals. I don't care what you do. Find what works for you, find what is sustainable for you, and stick with it. And if you realize that you've hit a plateau for whatever reason, before you just jump ship and go to the next shiny thing that pops up, the next fad diet or whatever, try to figure out what it is that caused the plateau. It could be that you're at a point where your macros need to be recalculated. You need to be eating more of one thing and less of another. But just to say, well, I'm stuck, so it's time to give this up and do something else. Personally, I think people are doing themselves a disservice.
You couldn't be more correct. I'll get people calling me and they'll say, hey, man, I was doing NSNG, I lost 50 pounds, and I've been plateaued now for a while. And I go, what's a while? And they'll say, 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. Right. And I'll say, have you put weight back on? And they'll say, no. It's like, well, you're not on a plateau. Mm-hmm. Just keep moving in that direction and you'll start losing weight again. Sure. And when you start interviewing those people, they'll say, no, I haven't done anything different. And it's nothing different. Then you'll find out, well, we had Super Bowl Sunday last weekend, and maybe I went a little crazy and there was a lot of drinking. And then the very next weekend, my wife's girlfriend, well, they had a big wedding. Maybe I went off the charts a little bit. And there was a lot of drinking. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, well, do you normally drink that much on weekends in a row? And they'll say, no, I never drank. Right. Okay, well, you're not on the plateau. You're lucky you didn't gain weight. Mm-hmm. It's that sort of thing. You can always, if you interview people long enough, you can figure out what happened to cause that. Yeah. Right. So yeah, it's not rocket science. You can usually figure it out without giving me a phone call, but people have trouble with that. By the way, before you move on, I wanted to say, I am interested in your story, and I'm going to ask you on this podcast so that you can't say no to me. Would you like to come on my podcast, onto my Saturday show? Because,
absolutely.
People on telling success stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Vinnie, in all honesty, this whole thing happened for me. In 2007, I hit rock bottom. And then in 2013 is when the doctor looked at me and said, you don't have to be on diabetic medicine anymore. And from that moment on, I have done nothing but constantly think about ways to help people improve the quality of their life through health and fitness. I realized through going through my own journey that, type 2 diabetes is not a death sentence. Type 2 diabetes is 100% preventable, and it's 100% reversible. It just takes a change in mindset, paying attention to what you're doing, and doing some exercise, So yes, I will tell you on this podcast in front of everybody that I would absolutely love to come on your show.
No, I would love to have you. As a matter of fact, it's stories. We do 5 shows a week over at. It's called the Fitness Confidential Podcast.
Okay.
And the Monday show is the original show with Anna Vocino. Back in the day, we did 3 shows a week, and it was me and Anna Vocino, who's written 2 great books. Mm-hmm. One is called Eat Happy. The other was called Eat Happy 2. We used to do 3 shows a week, but her schedule didn't allow for that anymore. So we did the original show on Monday, and on that same week, I continued on without Anna doing a Wednesday and Friday show.
Right.
And then my partner in the vitamin company, we started doing the Wednesday show together, Andy Schreiber. The Friday show, I've brought on every doctor. I don't know if you've had a chance to see my movie yet.
Not yet.
It's not a documentary. But every doctor that's in that movie has been on my show, plus every other doctor. I've had the William Davises of the world, the David Perlmutter's. Taubes has been on a half dozen times. Nina Teichholz comes on at the drop of a
Mm-hmm.
hat.
Right.
Yeah, I could go on Zoe Harcombe,
Oh yeah, didn't you even
um,
have? I believe you had an episode I saw because, like I said, I've been binging a lot of the audio podcasts and whatnot. You even had Dr. Fung on there at one point in time, didn't you?
oh, I'm the first guy to bring him on a podcast at the beginning. Yeah, Jason's a
Wow.
great guy. Jason's
Yeah.
been on. I want to say Jason's been on at least 3 times, if not more.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Ivor Cummins, you just go on and on and on.
Right.
Eric Westman, and I think I mentioned Tom. I could do, that Friday shows a who's who
Yeah.
in the, as far as experts go around the world. Tim Noakes was one of the
Mm-hmm.
early people to come on back in the
Wow.
early days,
Yeah.
2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Fedke comes on all the time. He was in my movie. But that's the Friday show. We call that the Luminary show. And then we have the
Okay.
Saturday show.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you would be on.
Okay.
That show gets a lot of attention
Mm-hmm.
because it allows a person who was like yourself, or a person still like yourself, who
Mm-hmm.
was 400, 500, 600 pounds to go, wait a minute,
Right.
wait a minute. That person was that heavy and they lost weight. You mean there's hope for me?
Mm-hmm.
That show, sometimes it brings tears to my eyes because
Yeah.
that's the show people, the Monday show and that show are the shows that everyone loves. And then we have Vinnie Sunday School where there's no language or anything else. And we do that one with Miss Gina Grad. I don't know if you know who Gina Grad
Yep.
is,
Yeah.
but
I've actually listened to a couple of the Sunday episodes.
yeah, Gina does the Sunday shows. She's Adam Carolla's co-host.
Yes.
Also, Tim Conway Jr.'s co-host in LA. And Gina does that Sunday school with me. So yeah, we have 5 shows a week. People love them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants me to do 7 shows a week. It's like, wait, you take off Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's like, come on, guys. Between my shows and I do Adam Carolla's show, I used to do it twice a month. Now I'll do it once a month because I moved.
Right.
And every shows like this, I just don't have time to do more than 5 shows a week.
People don't realize they don't realize what it takes to put together content like this. I mean, like I'm doing this podcast. I do a podcast for the Dad Bod Transformation Group on Facebook. They have a YouTube channel, so I do episodes for that. Plus, I do recorded content for my YouTube channel. I was actually earlier this morning, after I corresponded with you, I was sitting here writing a script for some videos that I'm putting together about more weight loss myths and fitness myths. So, it's a lot of work. And for those of us like yourself and me and so many others that are passionate about helping people, we devote ourselves to this, and people, they like our content, and that's great. That's what we want. We want them to get some value out of it. But at the same time, they're like, well, give us more, give us more. And, we're still human beings too. We got to have a day off to decompress and do some things and, go get a workout in ourselves or something, or go hit the sauna, whatever.
Yeah, and I like bringing people like yourself onto the show because you have a podcast. People might not like my jive, and they might go, "Wait a minute, Vinny's an asshole." But wait, there's this other guy I can go listen to. He's got the Jacked Up podcast. I'll go listen to him. John seems like a cool guy.
Yep.
So I don't care how people get the information. Matter of fact, I'm hoping you'll watch my movie and do a write up on your Dad Bod.
Oh, absolutely.
20,000. That movie was, we went to #1 on iTunes, beating out Free Solo when it first came out. We're still like number 2 or 3 or 4 or something like that on Amazon. We're on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
We're on airlines around the world, but no one's flying right now, so no one's seeing us on airlines.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah, it's on Vimeo, and it's on 65 different VODs around the world. The movie has been seen a gazillion times now, and it's only been out for like 5 months.
Right.
But yeah, there could be a lot of people in your group that have no idea about Fat, a documentary. And when you talk about myths, the whole thing is about all the diet myths you've been told. And, we have the aforementioned doctors explaining how all this happened, and So
Yep.
hopefully you'll like it, and hopefully you'll write a thing up on it and get people
Well,
going in that
I
direction.
will indeed, and actually, if you don't have a problem with it, once I get the movie, I might actually do a live and show a couple clips during the live broadcast, so that way people know what it's all
Yeah,
about, and I can give them the information on how to get it, without a doubt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't show the whole movie,
Oh
because I
no.
wouldn't have a problem with it, because I just want people to see it. But the distributor would,
Yeah.
you can
No,
show a piece.
I'm saying like a couple, maybe 30 or 45-second clips. You know.
Yeah, we have clips out there that you can show. That's
Okay,
already,
that's fine.
you
That'll be
can,
perfect then. Yeah.
yeah, you'll see them.
Yeah, because I'm all about. I mean, these guys. I got to tell you, Vinny. I don't know. I'm sure that you realize, being in the online space yourself, there are a lot of places that you can try to put content out there and try to put value into situations, and people either don't appreciate it, or everybody wants to sit there and argue with you that you're wrong and my way's right, and all this other bullshit. The Dad Bod Transformation Group is unlike anything I have ever seen. And I've been messing around with social media since my journey started, like about 2007, 2008, because I was like looking for all the information that I could find. So, and having gone through all these groups and been a part of all these different pages and whatnot, it's just amazing how we call it a brotherhood, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, these guys are all behind each other 100%. You see them posting in the group, and it's nothing to see 200 or 300 comments on a post where people are just like, man, you're doing awesome, keep up the good work, you got any tips for me, that type of stuff. And that's what it's all about. To me, it's all about people helping other people, because I mean, there for a while, I was alone. The only thing I had was the internet. And back then, 2007, 2008, there weren't the resources out there that there are today. And to have a resource like that, and others, there are other groups out there too, but Dad Bod's the only one I'm a member of. So that's all I can tell you about. But to have a resource like that for people that really need it is truly amazing in this day and age.
Yeah, there's a group. We have a Vinnie Tortorich's No Sugars, No Grains group. It's a private group.
Mm-hmm.
You have to ask to be in. You can't just because they want to make sure people aren't going to come in there and sell stuff to people.
Right, we're the same way.
Yeah, it's been around from the beginning. I remember when we got the first 500 people in that group.
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, wouldn't it be fabulous if it hit 1,000? And in no way, shape, or form did I ever think it would make it to 1,000. And before long, we were at 2,000 and then 3,000. And I was like, boy, wouldn't it be great if this thing got to 5,000 one day? And I said, it's impossible. Well, long story short, it's coming up on 30,000 people now. I want to say there's 28,000 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
I might be exaggerating a little bit. There's at least 27,000 in it.
Right.
And I marvel at it. And I remember not too long ago, I went in one day and I looked, and my older brother Mike was in the group.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, wow, he could call me. We're good friends.
Right.
Each other. But I said to him, I said, Mike, why? He goes, well, it's kind of hard to take information from your younger brother, but you got this group, I might as well go listen to it. It's like, whatever it takes, man. Mm-hmm. And he's doing really well. So it's good to see that the groups like yours, like mine, they just help people. It's just a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, so many people over the years, you could sit back, and I've read like stories, books that people have written about how they struggled with obesity and things like that. And so often you hear them say that they feel alone. And now they don't have to be, you know what I'm saying? And that's the great part about all this. So now let me ask you, because I know that like one of the biggest things out there right now is, I mean, keto was like going batshit crazy for a long time. And now it seems to be the carnivore, or what they call the ancestral diet. Now I've already done one podcast with a guy who's been carnivore for about 8 months now. And there are people out there like Dr. Sean Baker that have been carnivore for a couple of years at least. What's your take on all that as far as what they talk about with not getting like micronutrients and stuff like that?
Yeah, Sean Baker's a buddy of mine. As a matter of fact, he was over at my house a few times when I was still in LA, and it was the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of, I brought him on right at the beginning of when he was doing carnivore, and he was doing it as an experiment. He said he was going to do it for a month, and then he did it for 3 months, and then 6 months, and
Mm-hmm.
before long, it caught on because of him. Yeah, look, it works. I've had Amber O'Hearn on the show. I mean, she's cured herself with a carnivorous diet, a strict meat diet.
Mm-hmm.
I've had God, what's her name? Michaela Peterson on the show, who
Mm-hmm.
cured herself on a whole meat diet.
Right.
So does it work and does it help people? Absolutely. Um, I do find that for the average person, that it's very difficult.
Mm.
Number one, it's a bit more expensive,
Yeah.
and I could live on a whole meat diet. If you said, Vin, for the next year, nothing but meat,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even flinch.
Right.
But as far as getting, look, you're getting the proper amount of protein by eating meat. We were set up that way. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to get, if you get enough fatty meat, you're going to get enough fat. We've proven through that diet that you don't need to take in exogenous forms of carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get the carbohydrates from gluconeogenesis,
Right.
just transferring those proteins into fats,
Mm-hmm.
um, sugar, sorry. So, yeah, it's really not needed to do anything else, but people would get tired of it. I've had people say, "Yeah, I did carnivore for a month, and I was really strict." And I go, "How was it?" And I said, it got tough towards the end. There was no crunchy. I
Right.
missed my veggies, or I missed. These are just, yeah, and Sean and these guys are doing this, and I've seen, and Amber, and I've seen, and Michaela. All these people have become friends of mine, and
Mm-hmm.
I've seen what it's done for their life. So if it works, man, do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yep.
These people, Michaela was in big time trouble. Amber was in big time trouble. Sean, the guy looks like he's on juice just from eating meat and working out like a fiend. And by
Mm-hmm.
the way, he's not on juice.
Oh yeah.
That
No.
guy just works out like a fiend and eats a ton of meat.
Mm-hmm.
Look at his body.
Right.
Look at what it does.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
uh, you
Exactly.
know, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's like, and I have known, I know several people, well, don't know them personally, but, I follow people like Sean Baker and others, and you see them and they do look like maybe they would be on steroids or something. But what people don't realize is when you're on a, either an all meat diet or even a primarily meat diet, um, you're getting a lot of the fats and the cholesterols in that your body uses to increase your testosterone levels to begin with. So yeah, obviously you're gonna have a difference than somebody who eats more vegetables and things of that nature. So yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on. It goes right back to what we said earlier. If it works for you, do it. Plain and simple. Okay, I've got one more question for you, and it's the question that I ask everybody that comes on my podcast. Now, obviously, I've got to throw a little caveat in this because obviously you pretty much founded NSNG, and obviously you believe in the benefits of that. I believe in the benefits of it too. But outside of NSNG, if you could change one thing about health and fitness on a global level, what would it be?
Wow, one thing. You can't give me two things. Yeah, I'm going to do one thing.
No,
Um,
you can take two if you want.
yeah, I'm going to give one thing. It covers so much.
Mm-hmm.
Processed food.
Yes.
If a person did nothing else and just gave up processed foods, you're cutting out. You're cutting out a great amount of And it's a question I wasn't prepared for, but I think I couldn't come up with a better answer than that. And here's why: processed foods always has some sort of seed oil in it. Usually,
Mm-hmm.
you can always find high fructose corn syrup and/or sugar or a combination thereof,
Mm-hmm.
the seed oils alone is what's killing, not just our country, but the world, the Western world today.
Right.
I don't know how old you are, but I'm 57. When I was in high school, the fat chick had an extra 5 pounds on her.
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget my buddy Todd. He said, "Hey, you're good friends. You grew up with Melissa over there. These are their actual names, by the way."
Right.
He goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "You mind introducing me?" I said, "To Melissa?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Todd, she's a little chunky, right?" This is a conversation back in 1977.
Right.
Now, her
Mm-hmm.
chunky, by today's standards, she was a cheerleader, by the way, and she was ripped.
Right.
That's what we called chunky in 1977.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. The difference between 77, that's around the time that that McGovern ended his 10-year study, and we
Mm-hmm.
came up with a food pyramid shortly after that in the early 1980s. But the McGovern committee was over with, and I talk all about that in the movie. You can't get fat if you don't eat fat, and we started telling people to eat things like wheat thins,
Mm-hmm.
and which is processed crap. And then by the time the 80s got there, we were eating things called God, what were they called? Snack wells and
Oh, yes.
everything else had no fat in it, but it was full of seed oils. It was full of high fructose corn syrup and sugar.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Melissa became the really thin girl because we started seeing weight gains
Yes.
back then.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line. So I know it makes me sound like a horrible person, but that's the world we came from.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm only a couple of years younger than you. I'm 53, so I remember very well. And you're right. The fact of the matter is this: I can't remember the doctor who actually published the study, but I remember it was a study back some time ago. I want to say in like the 1940s, maybe the 1950s, where they really started talking about how saturated fat was the devil, man. You had to stay away from that at all costs. It was the major cause of heart disease and all these other things. What people don't seem to realize is your brain alone is made up of 30% saturated fat. To stop and think about that, you need saturated fat to make cell membranes. That's what our body does with saturated fat. So when you talk about the snack wells and the wheat thins and all that stuff that were fat free, you were basically, that's just like taking protein out of your diet. You're taking away some of the basic building blocks of human life. And it's crazy to think that we've gone from exactly what you're talking about. I remember those days well. If a girl was 5 or 10 pounds overweight, or a guy was 5 or 10 pounds overweight, he was considered to be fat. And now we live in a world where everybody loves the skin that they're in and the whole body positive movement and all this stuff. I'm all about loving yourself, but don't love yourself to the point where you're fooling yourself thinking that you're healthy when you're not.
Well, it's a bigger crisis. We're looking at this quote unquote pandemic, but when you lose 30,000 people a year to morbid obesity, is that not a pandemic?
Right.
Number one. Number two, the person you were thinking of is Dr. Ansel Keys, who pushed his agenda right after the president in 1957 had a heart attack. He started pushing his agenda against another scientist from, and we talk about this all through Fat documentary. You're going to love the movie.
Awesome.
We show that whole timeline of Ansel Keys versus the British scientists and what happened there. And this movie is no propaganda. It just shows, just a history lesson of what happened starting in the 1860s, and we bring it up to current day. And when you look at it, the reason that movie's done so well is people watch it, then they watch it again, and then they get their friends to watch it because they can't believe what they're looking at. It's crazy. And I tell everyone, I said, if you think I'm lying, there are you can't call these epidemiology, but there's two things you can look at where there are no actors involved.
Right.
Go on the internet today, if you're listening to this podcast, and pull up the Zabruta film. This is a film that was shot by, I think his name was John Zabruta, but I could be wrong, by a guy named Zabruta. It shows the killing of President Kennedy. find the fat person in that film. These are just average people on the street that day in Dallas, Texas. And if you want to see something where people have their shirts off, go look up pictures of the original Woodstock in the late 1960s, or was that 1970, somewhere around
68, 69, I believe, wasn't it?
Around there. Go look at it. None of these people have shirts on. Okay, you're going to see guys and girls, just regular hippies. They're ripped. They look like they've been doing ab workouts around the clock. They look better than triathletes who work out around the clock today.
Yep.
These kids never worked out back then. No one even thought of, if your name wasn't Joe Weider, if your name wasn't Mickey Hargitay, if your name wasn't Steve Reeves, you just didn't work out in 1969.
Nope.
I just need all the bodybuilders back then. Arnold was around barely. Franco Columbu was around barely. These people actively worked out. Okay. Yeah. Everyone at Woodstock was smoking a lot of dope and drinking beer, and they're ripped. They're ripped. They look better than our triathletes look today.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you see their cheekbones. They look young and vibrant. And these kids were trying to screw up.
Yeah. They didn't care. They didn't care what to eat. Sometimes they didn't even eat for days.
Yeah, because it was a different world.
Yeah.
It was just a different world.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you what, Vinny, you're spot on with your answer to my last question, which I figured you would be, even though I didn't give you a heads up on it. And I try not to with people because it tends to yield a more organic answer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. When I come on your show, by all means, put me on the spot. I don't care if I have to sit there and go, because I'm all about, when I do these podcasts, anything that I put out, I'm trying to be 100% real. I'm just me. I'm a bald, bearded hillbilly from West Virginia. I grew up in an industry that, we were quite foul-mouthed, to say the least, but, and I try to maintain it a little bit, but there are times that I get on a rant about something and I get passionate, and it gets rather colorful. So, but anyway, this podcast has wound up being everything that I thought it would be and more, and I could not thank you enough for coming on the show. I look forward to coming on your show and us having more interaction together. And as far as the Jacked Up podcast is concerned, you have an open invitation anytime you want to come on and talk about something. By all means, you just hit me up and we will schedule it in.
I appreciate it, sir. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Okay, guys, if you got value out of this video, which I'm sure you did with a man like Vinny on the show, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell so you get notified when the new episodes of the Jacked Up podcast drop. And until I see you again, you know the deal. Playtime's over. Get your asses to work.